Good morning, everyone, and welcome to a very special podcast about the Wheels Museum today and the history of Albuquerque. We have a super special guest with us today, Alan Carlson. He and I have been friends for about 30 years. He was telling me when I first started Wheels Museum, I knew his mother, and we talked about our family business, the Freed Company, and about the hopes of saving the property here and redeveloping it. And we've been working together ever since. And he's very interested in history and knows a great deal about the history of Albuquerque and the automobile business. And today he's going to talk to us about a subject I find fascinating, which is all of the racetracks that have been in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We're a big racing town, and this is going to be wonderful to hear about how they all came about and what happened to them. So here's Alan Carlson to tell you about all this.
Thank you, Leva. I didn't get interested in history till about 20 years or so ago. I wish I had done a lot sooner. I wish a lot more younger people would pay attention to their family stuff and history. But yeah, Albuquerque had a lot of tracks. A lot of them existed before I existed. The first racing facility in Albuquerque they used was the half-mile racetrack at the Territorial Fairgrounds, which was the southwest corner off of Central and Rio Grande, what used to be Main Street. They raced, actually the first race was not raced with cars, they timed them individually around the track. I think they averaged about 26 miles an hour or something. When the Albuquerque Traction Company that operated the city's trolley built a pavilion on the property, they called it Traction Park, which I thought was a great name for a racetrack.
You've heard it.
The fair closed in 1917 for World War I, but there's still a newspaper article from 1918 that says they had cars racing there together, and one of the participants was Herbert Gallus driving a Cadillac 8. So you can imagine what that looked like. In 1912, Mayor D.K.B. Sellers hired R.C. Dillon, a road builder from Encino, to grade a 20-mile track from east of the university to the foothills or around Bear Canyon. It was apparently completed because the newspaper said that they were getting people, the local drivers, to drive on it to pack it down, you know, to have a race during the first New Mexico State Fair, but I found nothing past the newspaper articles, not even in Mr. Seller's scrapbook about it, so no pictures of that. He was a car guy. He'd take guys on, you know, go to lunch in Bernalillo kind of thing in their cars, and he even arranged a race, they called it, from Albuquerque to Santa Fe and back. Must have been nice roads for that. But in 1925, the first professional racetrack was built. It was 1 1/8 banked dirt oval, and it was in the Wyoming and Zuni area. I know it's hard to believe anything was that wide open back then. They held races on the New Year's Day of January 1926, and the third day after they fixed the track up a bit. They raced on that occasionally, but in 1928, a group of Albuquerque businessmen built what they called the First American. It was a Pueblo-style facade on a structure, and they used it like the Gallup Intertribal Indian ceremonials. They used it for pageants and dances and concerts and rodeos. The Depression ended at about 32, but the building still is from the front straightaway of that big track out there. Okay, well, the track became known as the First American Grounds. That's all they called it because of the First American structure that was on it. Later they built about late 30s, they built a shorter track for midget race cars that were popular back in the 30s, and they called it Navajo Speedway. And they put a board fence around it because people were just sitting on the mesa watching the races.
Did you ever do any racing?
Yeah, I drove a car with a roll cage and a number on it. I can't say I really raced. Now, there was races there off and on, and at one point they even referred to it as the new fairgrounds, since the old fairground is closed, but it never was officially that. Um, The last race there was 1940, and 3 spectators were killed when the car went out of control. But the imprint of that large mile-and-a track is still on the south end. The south end of it is on the base. You can still see the image of it. But in 1939, right before that, there was a 5/8 mile horseshoe-shaped track built on the North Mesa. It was called Hell's Half Acre, believe it or not. It had dips and hills and sharp turns. It's kind of like a motocross track, only for cars. The newspaper ad said it was 2 miles northeast of the Triangle of Monte Vista. So measuring on the map, I found an image from '51 that shows something between Carlisle and Washington, south of Manal. It looks like where that track was, and it was so damaging the cars and the drivers, they didn't use it for very long. But also in '39, they went out to the old West Mesa Airport off of Coors and Central, and they made a half-mile dirt track called Coronado Gardens, because there was a dance club or something of that same name. It was fenced because the newspaper articles say that cars kept jumping the fence.
Alan, I was going to ask you, do you by any chance have any lists of names of the men who raced these cars during these years?
Oh yeah, and I'd love to see us have an Albuquerque Racing Hall of Fame to put all these names in.
Yes, I'd love to do that here in the Wheels Museum. We have quite a few displays of racing and some of the gentlemen who race, but we'd love to have lists, and we'd love to remember them more with an exhibit. If you or anybody would like to do an exhibit, it would be
Sports
wonderful.
Hall of Fame doesn't have many, but there's so many people that were involved in putting these races together, the promoters and the drivers, and
Well,
and the
let's do
sponsors.
that. Let's make an exhibit of that.
Okay.
Maybe we can have an event to honor
All
those
right,
people.
sure.
Love to do that.
Jerry Unser Sr. actually lived, his business and his home was right across Central from that old West Mesa Airport, where they were racing that last time, and he was the president of the Albuquerque Auto Racing Group at the time. But there's not much before World War II. Everything shut down, and they were conserving materials, and the guys that were racing were out there being soldiers. But post-war it got interesting. In 1946, 2 Wichita, Kansas men, Clark Corbin and Dick Mitchell, with backgrounds in racing, and an Albuquerque contractor, Ray Craig, built a 1/5 mile dirt track right next to the big first American track there at Wyoming and Zuni. It was called Corbin, from Clark Corbin and Dick Mitchell. They tested it with stock cars in summer of '46, but it officially opened for midget car racing in January of '47. And the first race, the guy got killed. They raced the +47 and '48, the midgets there. They had over 70 out-of-state drivers come to that track in those 2 years, plus local guys, and they recruited guys from the base, soldiers that were bored. They'd have them come over and drive race cars.
Yes.
That was pretty neat. 1948, another track was built, Rio Grande Sports Bowl. It was built by Toby Garcia, who had a salvage yard in 1100 Rio Grande Northwest. It was going to be the track that replaced the midget racing, because the midgets went down there in late '48, and Cormant went to racing stock cars or hardtops.
Would you be able to tell us the difference between a midget racer and the other kind of racer? People don't really know what we're picturing here.
Yeah, the midget racers were very small cars, 700, 900 pounds, open wheels, open cockpits. They had all kinds of motors up until the late '40s, when they actually they either had Ford VH60 engines or the Offenhauser motors that were specifically built for them. Powerful little cars, no protection for the drivers. The driver's head stuck way over the back of them, so sometimes they were thrown out, or sometimes they were crushed when they wrecked. Very dangerous. The bigger champ cars were the ones like raced at Indy back then, with the open wheels and open cockpits. Now, midget racing became popular about 1933. It started in California. They used like high school tracks to race their cars on, and sometimes they used board tracks to race on. It carried over after World War II, and they started up again. And
How fast would they go in these little dangerous vehicles?
a light car with a lot of power, they went pretty fast. I got the big wheel with Mickey Rooney. That was a movie about it.
Yeah.
That was really cool. So, in 1950, the local drivers were unhappy with both Cormet and Rio Grande Sports Bowl, so they decided to build their own track. There was some land on South Eubank near the entrance to the base, and it was purchased by Mr. and Mrs. Walter Heiser, who was the parents of Rowena Demery, married to driver Al Demery. They built Speedway Park, and here we are with a city of less than 100,000 people and 3 racetracks. So Rio Grande Sports Bowl closed the summer of '50, and the other 2 tracks kind of went head to head, and sometimes they'd ban their drivers from racing at the other track, or they'd be barred, and Bobby Unser went through that one time back then.
It'd be hard to bar Bobby Unser from anything.
Yeah, him and
Wayne Miller, another popular driver, they got barred because they went to the other track, and in '53, Cormet shut down for a while, but it reopened as Sandia Stadium, and in '53, Speedway Park was almost lost because the new state land commissioner decided to rescind the earlier sale and make the Heisers lease the property instead of buying it. They wanted to lease it until they wanted it back. So that was very scary. Then, of course, on the scene comes our famous promoter, Frank Crosby. He did advertising for Speedway Park in '53, and he managed Sandia Stadium in '54. And then he told all the drivers, we're going over to Speedway the next year. So Sandia Stadium closed and did not reopen in '55, and was actually torn down because it was developing there at Wyoming and Zuni, and there was already the Terrace Drive-In and some businesses headed toward the base, so they wouldn't have put up with the track. Speedway, with Frank Crosby, hosted boxing matches, ice hockey, camel racing, and the first bullfight staged in the United States. He was very, creative besides auto racing. And the racing flourished there in the '60s with high car counts and national events. In '67, the drivers got kind of bored, so on the off season, they went to a little what was a motorcycle track.
west of I-25 across from the Coronado Airport, and they refurbished it and called it Coronado Speedway. It was a short-lived thing, but it still shows up on aerial photos back then. In 1968, Albuquerque Raceway was built in the South Valley. It was west of Broadway and a couple miles south of Rio Bravo. A.L. Smith and Joe Glasgow, the owners, designed it with a half-mile dirt track on the outside and a quarter-mile high-banked track on the inside. That year, the New Mexico Motor Racing Association, it raced the sprints and the modifieds. They were kind of like midgets, but higher powered. They decided to go down there and race, so Speedway Park had to come up with some new divisions, including even motorcycles. Raceway's half mile was eventually shortened, and the middle track was smoothed out. It didn't have such high banks. had big games down there. It was called Valley Raceway for a while. And then it was Seven Flags Raceway, 82 to 87, and lastly it was Duke City Raceway. Speedway Park closed in 1981 when the state wanted the land back. They'd been fighting complaints from the neighbors about the noise and the dust for a while, so they were doomed. Raceway thrived, hosting state championships and World of Outlaw car shows, but with the death of the son and the husband of the owner of Imogene Smith, she decided to sell the property. She'd had enough. So the last race at Duke City Raceway was February 22nd of 2004. Did you ever go to the races?
Oh, yes, I love to go to the races. And my husband used to work with Mark Martin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, my husband is a doctor, and he was, this is a little bit off the subject, but it's interesting. He represented Viagra as a Mark Martin.
Yeah.
And so we went to California and many places to be with Mark
Nice, I
Martin.
remember
Yeah.
Mark, yeah.
Yeah.
We had some NASCAR sanctioned events out here at some of these later tracks. This one was the latest. In 2000, they built Sandia Motorsport Park. It was a paved multi-use racing facility southwest of Albuquerque here. It was built by a group of investors for about $3 million, and the city didn't have anything to do with it. And like Duke City Raceway, the half-mile outside and the quarter-mile inside paved track shared a straightaway. They also shared that straightaway with a big road course when it stretched out east. Myself and other fans enjoyed the dust-free events after breathing
that's
dirt
right.
so many years.
Yeah, I'm the same here.
Yeah.
Same here.
So the loss of Duke City Raceway wasn't quite as painful because we had another track to go to.
Right.
Racers, on the other hand, you gotta use all different equipment and you burn your tires up and you gotta learn how to drive all over again in asphalt. That was interesting. They had sprint cars, mini sprints, legends, IMCA modifieds, and numerous classes of stock cars, trucks, motorcycles, vintage sports cars, go-karts, and even school buses. Had these big old school buses run around the track, 3 abreast, and sometimes they'd have a passenger with a squirt gun and they'd squirt each other or the fans. It was quite a deal.
How many women are involved in this? I'm just curious. Is
Oh.
this 100% male?
No.
It's about that.
They've got the women have been racing, ever since Speedway Park and beyond.
We do have a race car here that was used by the first lady who won NASCAR.
Cool.
So, yeah. I know it's not 100% male, but I guess mostly it's
Well,
a male bastion.
Dick Shaw, my friend who drove a stock car owned at Speedway Park in the 70s, his niece, Caitlin Shaw, got involved in the NASCAR things, and she got to race trucks, and she got involved in promotional things with drivers and whatever back there. So, yeah, she got into it. Okay, let's see. Where was I? Oh, in 2011, there was a 3/8 mile dirt track built west of the pit area for that paved track. I guess they called it Sandia Speedway for a while. Not to be confused with Sandia Stadium, and, all of that. But in 2012, it changed names to Napa Speedway. And Jim Guthrie, our local former Indy racer here, was the president of the group that ran that. And last year, him and 2 other investors, including Dan Brockett from the Whiskey Garage Drift Series, bought the Speedway. They plan to do a lot of the drifting, that's where they slide the cars and go as fast as they can without losing control. And, there's no mention of a dirt track right there now, so I don't know if we'll have a dirt track racing this year or not.
This has been so fascinating. I feel like I'm on a race with you.
We've had other racing, micro midgets, little bitty
Oh.
miniature cars like that.
Great, yeah.
They raced at a track that was inside the ice arena. In '53, Cormett shut down for a while. I was talking about other forms of racing that were micro, little bitty cars, and they raced them in 1953 in the ice arena building. It was in the 5100 block of Lomas Northeast. Frank Crosby from Speedway Park was into that because he put on other shows there. In '56, they built a little track inside of the 66 drive-in over there off of Central and Coors, and they raced them there. I think Bob Yunter said he even went over and raced there. But 58, I have a picture of them racing on a dirt track in the southwest corner of the state fairgrounds.
Really? Yeah.
They're real popular. The little kids had their uniforms on and everything, and
I think I did some of that in those days with little tractors and, yeah.
just like real racing, you know, go-karts with bodies.
Yeah, I did some of that.
But I did not mention before anything about drag racing. Of course, they had drag racing on South Eubank by the Speedway Park out there for a long time, and the New Mexico Timing Association was out there, and it was actually organized. Also in '53, they blocked off Pinal Boulevard east of Eubank, and they held drag races.
Gee,
Sponsored, you
Racing
know,
town.
the state police, the police helped with it, and, you know, a couple organizations, and even the Albuquerque Sports Car Club was
how
involved.
fun.
So there was legal drag racing on the street before we had the track. The actual drag strip out there by Montesa Park was built in 1963, so they just celebrated 60 years. They closed for a while, but you know, the track's still going strong, and it's still a big draw for auto racing here. Very sad we lost the Unser Racing Museum.
Yes, that was sad.
Because, you know, pretty soon people will be wondering, who's Unser on that Unser Boulevard
Right.
sign?
That's sad.
Yeah, we need to get some kind of Albuquerque racing history put together.
I'd love to work with you on that. And also, I'd like to say, if there's anyone listening to this who's interested in helping us, of course, we'd love to have your help with that. And if you are a racer, or were a racer, or know anyone, have any memorabilia or tickets from racing, or pictures of racing, or any automobiles, we'd love to talk to you about this very important and fascinating part of who we are in Albuquerque.
One of the things I like about the history is I had a guy contact me. His brother raced here at Speedway Park, and he's in a assisted living now, and they're getting ready to have a party for him, and he lost all his stuff in moving. So, he was asking me to get him some pictures and items from when he raced at Speedway Park.
Oh,
So
nice. Yeah.
we've been putting that together.
We want to save this exciting and interesting history, and we do many events here. So, again, if there's anyone in the audience who would like to do an event about the racing history with pictures, we're going to have pictures to show on this podcast, but we'd like to go further with this and illustrate more about what you're discussing with us today. All the men and women who have participated in racing and enjoyed it and made it a part of who we are in Albuquerque. Please call us. We're at 243-6269 at Wheels Museum, so we'd love to hear from you. Or maybe you, I don't know if you want anyone to contact you, but,
No, they can contact you. I've
okay,
got some other contacts through the Historic Albuquerque Incorporated that I work with, and Albuquerque Historical Society. I did some things for them a while back.
good.
I'll be doing something just on the midget racing in the future too, so.
Great. It's wonderful. We want to thank you all so much for joining us today. I hope that you will come to the Wheels Museum on Thursday, February 8th, because we have a wonderful musical concert, a guitar player, Bob Bovee. He travels all over America, very, very prominent. Many people are coming to it. It's going to be a great, great event that day. So that's going to be at 11 o'clock in the morning on February 8th. So if you'd like to come, please call me so we'll make sure we have a chair for you. And the number is 505-243-6269. On the 10th and 11th of February, Wheels Museum will be open. The rail yard market is doing Valentine's Valentine's event. We'll be there and we'll be here. So that's from 10 to 2 next Saturday and Sunday will be open. So please come and see us. Lots of people are coming in and really enjoying what we're doing all the time here. We're also looking for more events, so if you have an idea for an event, want to schedule a party or a presentation or a club meeting or a corporate meeting, please give us a call. We have a conference room for about 50 or 60 people, and the museum is full of more than 5,000 exhibit items. We have 21,000 feet here. Love to have you come in and see what we're doing as volunteers for C3 for Albuquerque, New Mexico, and have done for 30 years. Hope to continue the next 30. Alan, it's been wonderful to see you again. You're fabulous. I'm glad
Thank
you're
you.
working with us, with HAI, Historic Albuquerque, and other organizations. We're all working with those organizations. We house HAI here in our offices. So saving the history of Albuquerque is our job, and inspiring people to continue to make progress for our city. Thank you for coming and being with us. What else,
The
Alan?
most important wheels is the wheels in Liba's mind, keeping all this
Oh,
stuff
you're very
going here.
sweet.
So thank you, Liba.
Well, you're too. Thank you so much. That's very, very generous. Very generous.